Run, Forrest, run! Run, Forrest!
Little Nightmares 2 falls a little flat in my opinion. Being a big fan of the first Little Nightmares, I was overly excited for this release. Now, there are a lot of great points to this sequel, and it does add a lot more questions than answers, as the first one did. And during this review, I'm going to be as spoiler-free as possible, and try to leave out anything that could be detrimental if you plan on playing it. The story starts off with our main character, Mono, sitting around in a creepy forest, as most people do at this age. We make our way through and stumble upon Six, the main character from the first Little Nightmares, though she's less one yellow raincoat. The two embark on a journey which is filled with, guess what? Nightmares. The gameplay itself revolves around traveling in a linear pattern with some puzzle mechanics tossed in. Traveling around is a treat. You do get a little bit of a 2.5D where you can go into the background a little bit in some areas. And you're always curious about what's around the next corner or out the next door or window. Now, when it comes to the puzzle system, I actually end up liking about 80% of them. Sometimes it involves moving boxes around or moving specific switches in a specific order. Other times it's looking for small details that are in the world that you need to interact with that are not apparent at first. Other times, it's a series of events that isn't conveyed well, and it caused me to get frustrated. Some of the puzzles actually lasted up to 5 minutes of me just trying to figure out what the game wanted from me. There was a couple of them very specifically, you had to work with lights, and it was almost to the point of frustration because you had to do things in a very specific way or you were getting got. Now, one thing that Little Nightmares 2 does add is a bit of combat, which I could take or leave, and it's one of those things that it really didn't add a bunch to it. It added some elements, but it also added some frustrations because you did have to get the attack pattern just right or you were going to die. And while that's not a big deal because restarts and things like that were fairly quick, again, it could have been removed. They left it in. I would have been okay either way. Also, I did run into one bug that required me to fully close out of the game on my Xbox Series X and reload my checkpoint. After dying, Mono would just not get up from the crouch position. Reloading the save did nothing. Going to the menu didn't fix it either. I had to fully close out of the game, quit it, and then reload it. And it finally worked. While this wasn't game-breaking, it was a bit annoying. Overall, it is a dark, gritty world in Little Nightmares, and I love it. There's just a solid amount of unsettling environmental objects, old school playgrounds, to just streets that are vacant. There's just some great details in these things, and you just have this sense of dread and tension that just lingers around everything. There's just a good, solid amount of unsettling environments, creatures, and enemies. However, with all that praise, I feel like the game lost some of that unsettling factor with this repetitive apartment environments. A lot of it is you traversing in and out windows, up and down ladders inside of these old vacant apartments. And not that that's a problem, but you kind of get, for the lack of better words, you're getting used to that environment and it doesn't give you that same creep factor. Looking back, I felt like half of the gameplay was inside ruined apartments and not a lot happened in them. While we do visit other locations such as a hospital and school, which are very tropish to horror/thriller games, all the in-between areas tend to be dilapidated apartments, just doesn't give me the same feeling of the areas in the first game. While apartments do give a sense to the storyline, which is being redacted because of spoiler reasons, it doesn't fall into place. You don't understand the severity of what is going on in these environments until the very end, which is good in the storytelling aspect. But during that journey, I just didn't get that same feeling that the first one gave me. One great way this game stands out above all the rest is not using words to tell its story. It's through actions and sounds. The sound effects in this are fan-freaking-tastic. And the music scores are on point. There's a section where you're fighting an enemy. I call them the porcelain kids. Their scream is almost a mix of childlike and animalistic. And it's just one of those sounds that just doesn't feel right, but it feels so right in this world. On top of that, there's certain sound effects like the rain hitting on the concrete, to the rooftops, to you springing bear traps, or the shotgun blasts going off. Everything just has a great tenseness to it and just a great dread and horror feel without being blood and guts kind of horror. And I love that because I'm not a huge person that is into horror titles. All those kind of sound effects and music just sets the tone so well and gives you such a creepy vibe from the beginning to the end. To kind of wrap things up, again, I did love Little Nightmares 2, and maybe just not as much as the first one. It feels almost like a 2-step forward, 1-step back situation. I liked Mono as a character. I thought his idea and concept was really cool. But the apartment environments dragged on a little too long for me. I loved the puzzle systems, but there was a few of them that just made it so frustratingly confusing that it just removed me from the game because I didn't know what the game wanted. Either things were too dark, even though I followed the color palette matchup on the screen during setup, or just certain keys that I just couldn't tell looking on a TV screen. I don't understand why. Maybe it was just me. And that's a good possibility. Overall, is this game worth playing? Definitely. Again, if you like the first one, it's a great either sequel or prequel. I don't know which way they're going with this. It kind of feels prequel-ish to me. But if you've never played Little Nightmares 2, go play the first one first, because the first one is fantastic. Play its DLC stories, because they're fantastic. And then play 2 and go, yeah, this is a really good game as well, because overall, it did a fantastic job. So, that wraps up my review for Little Nightmares 2 on the Xbox Series X. If you'd like to see some gameplay footage, click the link to your left. That'll take you to a running playlist of some content for you. And if you like what you see and you want to see some more, click the link to your right. That'll take you to the channel itself, where I have tons of videos going on over there. Until next time, you guys, stay frosty.